So, ladies and gentlemen, today I must mostly speak English, unfortunately, but also our first keynote speaker was using English. Thanks, Eri. And as you can see, I am speaking about legal risk analysis. One Eri Spikehofer has written about those also. And you say that it's a new method. It may be. So today I am using some examples from Finland. Why? They are very new and they are opening the discussion about digital environment in both public and private sector. They are also somehow international. So the idea is not only to tell about Finland. That would take only 5 minutes. But now when we are discussing about this wholeness, so it would take a lot more. So, Eri already told to you that I come from Lapland, where we have just now only 1 meter snow, and a little bit different than here, I think so. And we are witnessing there a lot of problems concerning the digital environment. But first, I must start when discussing about law and legal interpretation. And I am not speaking to lawyers only. As the dean yesterday was telling, so we cannot anymore to think about that we are only discussing inside the profession of lawyers. We must be ready to discuss with many other professions. That has been true many years, but today it's more and more important. It's more and more important to see how, for example, administrative people are using legislation, how they do understand legislation, and what we can do to open the real discussion. I start with one artificial example. We speak today about artificial intelligence and so on. And when you open the newspaper, you can see that there are stories about artificial intelligence every day. Almost everything seems to be artificial. And well, but which kind of artificial? 20 years ago, the famous Finnish professor of sociology, Risto Heiskala, was writing a book which has the name Toward Artificial Society. But he was not speaking about artificial intelligence. He was speaking about the society where everything is more and more regulated. And it's opposite to the natural law ideas. And he was worried about how difficult it can be to interpret law in such a society. So this photo, which I have now, is also in the newspapers. It has been getting the title Artificial. So it's taken by Miss Hildur Larsson, who was the first professional photographer in my town, Rovaniemi. Why is it artificial? Because it is black and white photo. It has been black and white. And now there has been in use the de-oldify program, which you can get from internet without fee. And we just opened one exhibition of her photos. Quite many of those are now colored photos, artificial, really. In this environment, it is. So, and of course, they are a part of our informational cultural inheritance. And we are now living and witnessing the age when information really is something else than it was earlier. Our colleague, Professor Dr. Honoris Causa from Lapland, by the way, who has also been participating in this series sometimes. So he has written those very well chosen words. We are really coming to a new, totally new age when evaluating the role of information. And the main question now is, do we have information culture? So Professor Hans-Peter Bull has been writing many interesting papers. And this already 2008. Do we have information culture? His answer and my answer are similar. We don't have. Because when we are speaking about culture, there should be some guidelines and borderlines. It's not only any open field where everyone can put whatever they want. And especially we must remember that data protection has been one of those legislative starts which is really giving some guarantee to us to have, at least later, the information, sophisticated information culture. I come back to these problematics later. And I speak about bureaucracy. There are different kinds of bureaucracies. Very typical has been to say that we have good and bad bureaucracy. Good bureaucracy in administration can guarantee the rights of citizens. Bad bureaucracy is to guarantee what? It's to guarantee the rights and maximum well-being of those who are keeping that bureaucracy. That is an old divide, but however, we have a lot of bureaucracies, communication cultures. We can speak about communication cultures. And now when we are coming to this digital environment, the gaps in our communication cultures can really be very, very big and bad. Well, Max Weber is not anymore so popular. He was during the 70s, for example. Later we came to the age of Manuel Castells and so on, and Habermas, of course. There's a story that in Helsinki, it was not possible to get your doctoral dissertation accepted without at least one footnote to Habermas. Some kind of communication culture. And then we are now speaking about digital lawyers. I have been thinking that we are all digital lawyers, although we are not all lawyers. But however, we are so much deeply inside the digital culture and legislation and legal principles. And if we don't know where we are, that is extremely risky. If we don't know which kind of risks we are taking when living in the digital culture, in the digital legal culture, we are really taking extremely risky steps. But however, what are we thinking about law? Mr. Matti L. Aho, who was even the chairman of the Finnish Lawyers Association, very sophisticated lawyer, once 87 was writing his opinion about law. The concept of law is like a pocket into which everyone may put whatever he or she wants. Quite often when reading even new and especially new legal books, we can see that it is true. So we have different kind of new methods. We have different kind of new attitudes. And it's difficult to find the real legal culture. Mr. Aho was writing about the legal languages, but this was one more deep comment in that connection. Oh, sorry. But it's not only so that we have what we do want in our pocket. We have also our methods. My teacher, Professor Kalle Makkonen, was writing his doctoral thesis auf Deutsch, and that is still, following the idea of Wolfgang Kilian, one of the best books which we have been reading. Very clear, which was not giving any place to such kind of comments which Mr. Matti L. Aho had. However, he was also telling that norms are like the fruits of tantalus. And they really are, because quite often we are in a situation where we must use special tools to get to know what is right and what is wrong. Some years ago, the famous American judge, Mr. Harry T. Edwards, was publishing one paper in the Michigan Law Review, where he was really critical against all kind of law and something disciplines which they had in the United States. He said that can, for example, law and literature give any tools to lawyers? He was not speaking about legal informatics. We must be happy. So that comment, those comments, they started a long-staying discussion in America. And at the end of that discussion, Professor Judge Edwards started in New York University and was satisfied. He had found a new environment. Sorry, that was a little bit problematic situation. I take it visible. No, you can't take it. I only put my hand behind. So Mr. Edwards, as a professor, is now satisfied. But I think I haven't seen any new paper, but I think that he would be satisfied to legal informatics when understanding that it is really something which is important to all practical lawyers. And he was really seeking the situations and the disciplines which are guaranteeing us something, real skills in practical legal life. And that has been our opinion in Nordic countries and here in Middle Europe when we are speaking about legal informatics. And sometimes we can see very good analysis of legal interpretation methods. This new paper written by Ivan Padian is one good example. He is going strictly through the whole process of legal interpretation and which kind of possibilities we have when we are reading law. Law, which is, as Antonio Anselmo Martino has said, one of the most strict sciences in the world. One of the most strict. How about the idea that it's something like a pocket where you can put everything? And as we all know, Antonio Martino is one of the main persons, we can say, in the discussion of legal informatics. Still active in South America and in Italy, I think so. And he was using those words already 87 when thinking about the possibilities to use computers in legal life. Well, but very often we are witnessing really the same situation which Mr. Aho, Dr. Aho was writing about. We are using words, slogans, concepts so that the real content of our messages is not visible. I was really looking a lot of new Finnish literature and Nordic literature, legal literature, and I could find such kind of comments. Unkundigkeit, kann man sagen. Unkundigkeit is da when we are reading those comments. Es ist davon auszugehen, dass nach allgemeiner Lebenserfahrung, bei Betrachtung des Einzelfalls, bei Berücksichtigung der besonderen Situation und so weiter. Where is the real message? Usually the only message is that the writer has the opinion that it should be like he is saying. He does not tell really why. But unfortunately, that is not only the practical life when speaking about attorneys and judges, even different kind of expert bodies are using those words. Unfortunately, my last body, my last legal working field was a good example. The Finnish Data Protection Board. Many years we were writing our decisions by such a way. We only said that following those and those rules, we are looking that it should be like that. And we even got small salary about that. But it was something very personal. Our first secretary did have this kind of working style, and I could not change it. It was out of my power. So now we are almost at the end of this legal interpretation part. So my teacher, Professor Aulis Aarnio, who is very well known even in Middle Europe, and who is, you can say, nowadays the grandfather of the Finnish legal theory. He has written those words in one commentary book, and I still use those all the time. We must be inside the systems, but we must also show where are the borderlines of the systems. So law is a strict systematic science. And we have our legal concepts. Famous Finnish professor of legal theory, Hannu Tolonen, was speaking about the triangle of the concepts, principles, and theories, which are our key tools. So the next question is, who can use those and who are building those tools? And what are we doing with them in practical legal informatics, where we are witnessing the digital environment? What are lawyers and administrative people doing in this new environment? What kind of problems they may have? So we all, of course, do know that we have a lot of people who don't like computers, who are not willing to work with computers, and so on. For example, my good friend, a female judge, just retired, said during her last year in local court that I am making decisions. My secretary is using computer. Still, 3 years ago. And I have made this kind of list of lawyers, those who fear technology, from those who are waiting for the leading cases. And that is today one of the biggest problems. Can we sit down and wait 10 years or 7 years to get a new Supreme Court case, which is probably a case about something which is already out of market, thanks to the speed environmental moving. That's a real problem. And now to the most important part of my short lecture. Finland is the first in EU's digital comparison. We are very proud of that, really. But we are leading some Nordic countries, Sweden and Denmark. And it's the EU comparison. Norway is not visible. So we must be proud of that. So many are using computers. So big part of administration is using computers and data systems. But how about the quality? How about the quality of the systems and the processes? The Ministry of Finances, which has published this, is not telling about that. And that's why I had to look at what is going on nowadays. So the first, which I could see, and which even the Parliament Ombudsman was seeing, that we have the specialization problem. For example, too often ministries and public offices are telling that the first law which they are obeying is the Openness Act. It's not the first one, because it's usually the data protection legislation. What can we do with the personal information of citizens? And our Parliament ombudsman already about 10 years ago was giving signal to administration that please be careful which kind of legislation you are putting visible as the key legislation. Nothing has happened. When I open the pages of the University of Helsinki, we are following the Openness Act and so on and so on. So this kind of specialization has been and is still a real problem. This problematics between openness and data protection has been visible in a new Finnish doctoral thesis, which is published in English. And the lady here, Anu Talus, she is the deputy data protection ombudsman now in Finland. We have the leading ombudsman, Mr. Reijo Aarnio, and two deputies, Anu and then Jari Roman. Anu is from Helsinki and Vaasa. In Vaasa, she was my student, and Jari is from Lapland, where he was my student. I'm so happy that I have met so brilliant young people. Please try to read what Anu is telling about. How he is analyzing the openness and secrecy tensions. And now we are coming to some elementary questions which I could see when collecting my material during last year. There were visible some interesting questions. First, can or should public administration use cookies when organizing public services? Secondly, can or should public administration deliver personal data when organizing public services? And how? Third one, can or should public administration use automatic systems when organizing public services? And then, can or should public administration take seriously the recitals of EU regulations and directives? Should they take seriously the recitals? And how to do that? We all know that the new data protection regulation is really containing a lot of recitals. A lot of recitals. Very typical way in Finland has been that lawyers in public administration are only reading the sections. And at universities, the public law teachers have said that, well, they are recitals, but they are not binding. Read only sections, please. Some examples, practical examples connected to those questions. So first, cookies. The problematics of cookies is not a new one. So when we were first discussing about those, it was the beginning of 90s, I think. So Yun Bing asked me to give my opinion about cookies. I said that, well, they are quite sweet. I did not have any idea of cookies just at the beginning of 90s. Are we using cookies, and should we use cookies in public administration? There is now a quite new research. which is giving a little bit information how administration is working. Look at the findings. Only Spanish, German, and Dutch websites, official websites, had no commercial trackers. That is a terrible result. Are we really living in a new EU constitutional state? Or are we living in a state where everyone can do whatever they want if they have the keys, tools to digital environment? And we are now going to the page of the Finnish National Institution, Social Insurance Institution, which is keeping one of the biggest databases in Finland. One of the biggest databases in Finland, containing information about almost all citizens. That Kela has told to one newspaper that it is using cookies, and it's not telling to customers that they are using cookies. So the Finnish National Insurance Office, concerning Kela, one historical memory. We were 97 making a report to the Ministry of Finances about the need of data security information in Finland. Our answer was, yes, we do need. It was easy to say it after 700 pages. We really were discovering a lot of situations. And then the government asked the opinions of those who are having big registers. This Kela was sending its comment that we don't need any such kind of legislation. We have our systems and they are really good systems, functioning very well. About 2 weeks later, the Kela systems were crashing down, falling down, and for example, students could not get their studying benefits during the next month. That about how well they were functioning. Now they are not telling that they are using cookies. And then, surprise, surprise. Next, if you are opening the pages of Kela, they are telling about that to, for example, Facebook and Google. Where are the secrecies in the constitutional state? And what did Kela say? That was not a lawyer who was telling that, but however, this happens because the technology and data collection tools that Kela uses on its web pages are supplied by private companies. So in the Finnish administration, private companies can do whatever they want, even if that would be against the law. Well, and next question, how about automatic decision making? One of the oldest questions in the field of legal informatics. Already Lee Lavincher was discussing about that at the end of 90s. And then after that, a lot of other people who were having the opinion that it is not possible to build systems where machines are by automatic way making decisions. And we have the same idea still in the European data protection legislation. Last year, the Finnish Constitutional Law Committee was discussing about one legislative draft, one bill, government bill, in fact, and they were, after the discussion, sending this message to our government. It is to investigate the extent to which automated decision-making ensures legal safety and implements the requirement that public servants are legally liable for their decisions. And they said that please don't send anymore any bill, government bill, where this automated decision-making is possible, without telling why and how. And that was something. That was something. For example, the general director of the Finnish tax administration, by the way, an IT man, he said that it's impossible to think about that all decisions would be made by persons. We should take 3,500 new civil servants. So he did not understand what does mean automatic decision making. As an IT man, he did not. And then Mr. Tuomas Pöysti, our new Chancellor of Justice, probably the best expert in the field of legal informatics in Finland, he was asking this Kela, once again that Kela, asking the Institute to say how they have been following Article 22 of the GDPR. Now, data protection legislation comes visible. And in fact, that is the old idea of Tuomas Pöysti when we have discussed. Tuomas has the opinion that data protection regulation, it can help public administration to understand its role. I was first a little bit critical, but not anymore. This is a really good message which Tuomas is sending. The man is here, my former student, and there we have the Finnish law collections, which we still are using, although that is also in electronic format. Though Tuomas is so active now that a lot can happen. The former chancellor did not know anything about IT. So this change is remarkable. And about automated decision-making, you can find some discussion in the pages of EU, and that is interesting that the discussion was already before the new data protection legislation, as you can see, 2016. But please, there is something, even positive, some guidelines which are helping us to understand how we should think about automated decision making. Then one more comment, which really is interesting. Our Supreme Administrative Court made this year a new decision concerning customer information. The Finnish tax administration had asked one bank to give a lot of information of almost all customers of the bank. The bank said that we are not giving. And taxation administration was ready to go to the Supreme Administrative Court. And they said that you are not giving, you have the right to be outside that at least party. And in that decision, they write out those words. The recitals of the GDPR do not constitute applicable legal provisions, but they do express the aims and objectives that the articles of the instrument seek to achieve. It is the first one in Finland, but I don't know how many such kind of comments we can find somewhere in Europe. The tradition has been, as I said earlier, please read the sections only. They are only stories in recitals. They are not only stories. We are coming near to the traditional way to interpret law and rules. So, now to the bad bureaucracy. I think that all those examples, they were telling about bad bureaucracy. So, when we are, as lawyers, we are strict lawyers, good lawyers. But when we are looking at data systems, we are not anymore good lawyers, usually. We are really having the tradition that administration is buying data systems or data services, and we are not going into the systems deeply enough. We are, I know that almost in every country, we are using the end user comments. Is it easy to use or is it not so easy to use? But those end users, they are not, when testing, they are not taking into account the legal borderlines. And then, when something happens, it's very typical to see in international news also that, oh, sorry, it was a human error. Mostly they are not human errors. Mostly they are those cases where there are leaks are telling about lacking risk analysis. How to analyze the risks when using and having new data systems. Well, I think that all those so-called Vio laws have been visible in this story. Professor Vio really was writing about Vio laws. The first one is communication usually fails except by accident. So in the cooperation with lawyers and data experts, that is really true. We are, when building our systems and when analyzing law, so in the field of legal informatics, we are always having the proactive perspective. So does say Peter Seiper. There's not any need to speak about some proactive group of people and research because we are inside proactive world. And then there we should nowadays try to connect the deep structure of law and the deep structure of data systems. That seems to be the only way forward. Information is really something which is something else than 100 years ago and something else than 20 years ago. And we should remember that it is not only raw material for an effective bureaucratic administration, but bureaucracy is everywhere waiting for us if we are not making risk analyses. That is the end of my lecture.
Thank you very much, Ahti, for this broad, interesting, excellent talk. You see the